Hello, so this is the second presentation for Equilibrium, and we're looking at slightly different specification objectives. We just need to cover how the model of demand and supply can lead to different equilibrium prices. I'm going to have a look at a few examples in this presentation, but we're also going to be focusing on the interrelationship between markets, so how a change in demand or supply in one market can affect another market. And these are common questions for the multiple choice questions. Students often struggle with demand and supply diagrams, especially if they haven't learned what affects demand and what affects supply. So if we look at, if I get my pen out here, if we're looking at a price increase, there's only two reasons that could cause a price increase. First of all, it could be an increase in demand. So I'll just draw that there. So that's demand 2, demand 1, and that will cause a new equilibrium. Go. So we can see that, not very clearly because I haven't drawn my original equilibrium, but we can see that the price has increased. This would be P2, and the equilibrium quantity is also increased in this case because of the increase in demand. The other way that you can have a price increase is if we have a decrease in supply. So if supply shifts inwards, we also get an increase in price, but in this case we have a smaller equilibrium quantity than we had before in the original one. So if you have a question when it's linking it to a case study, it's a 10-mark question, and it's asking you for reasons why there's been a price increase in the market, there can only really be two reasons. It's either got to be an increase in demand or a decrease in supply, and then you can think about all the factors, passivits and pyrates, that affect demand and supply. If it's a price decrease, it's just the other way around, so it's either that demand has moved inwards like that, or supply has increased. So maybe for demand moving inwards, this would be D2. We could have the product has become less fashionable, or there's been some negative advertisement or negative publicity in a newspaper, or incomes have decreased if it's a normal good, or incomes have increased if it's an inferior good. There could be various reasons. There's loads of reasons out there. For an increase in supply, maybe there's been a subsidy applied to this, maybe there's been technological advancements, so it means that the business can produce more of it. Loads and loads of factors, but you can see that there are only really four things that can happen to these diagrams. Either demand's going to move out or inwards, or supply is going to move out or inwards. And it's quite rare actually on the AS papers, especially for AQA, that they're asking you to shift both curves. So if in doubt, you just think about which one of the curves would be shifting. So here we go on to the real world markets and the interrelated markets, and these are some key definitions that you have to learn, and students will tend to fall down on this in the exam if they don't learn these definitions. These are just some very important definitions. So joint demand is more commonly referred to as when you have complements, and these are items that are bought together. So usually have this word "and" in there. Where's my cursor? So fish and chips you can buy together. I've got a picture of them in case you didn't know what I was talking about. So if if we have this one here as chips in the market, it's quite hard to write this, and for some reason the supply of chips increases. Maybe there's been a subsidy added to potatoes or something like that. Now we can see in the market that that's causing a decrease in the equilibrium price, and we know that a decrease in the price of a complement or something that's in joint demand can cause an increase, drawn that in a funny way, in the market for the complementary good. So in this case here I've got fish. So really what the consumer is doing is they're thinking of the total price when they consume it together. They're not just maybe thinking about just the price of chips and just the price of fish. They're thinking about the total price of having fish and chips. So it's very logical. If we've had a price fall in one of them, it means the overall price has got cheaper, and therefore we might see the demand for fish going up. But we do see that has an effect on the price there, an increase in the price in that market. You do have to draw all your equilibriums, and it's just hard for me to draw them. We would have had P1 there and Q1 there and Q2 there as well. Okay, so next one is competitive demand. And this is more commonly referred to as substitutes, and these are items that could be replaced by another item. It can do the same job. So here we have, usually, I'm keeping on the food theme here, but we usually have the word or. So we could have fish and chips or pizza if you're thinking about a takeaway option. So there are fish and chips and there are pizza. Okay, so if in this example, if this is fish and chips, I'm going to put the F and C here, and then this is my market for pizza. You can see here another important thing is that I'm drawing two different diagrams to represent the two different markets. So here we have fish and chips, and say that there has been a subsidy placed on potatoes or for fishing, but what that does is that moves the supply outwards. We've got a very similar diagram that we've had from the last case, and we're going to have a lower price, we're going to have an increased equilibrium quantity there. But what this will do to this market is, because we've had a drop in the price of a substitute, we're going to see demand decreasing for this market here. So it's affecting the demand for another market. So it's very intuitive, this joint demand and competing demand or competitive demand, but you just have to really think it through and try and relate it to an example that you understand and that's relevant to your life. So try and think of a few examples, and so that you can really tell a story in the exam and you can really fully understand it. Because I think sometimes when students get too bogged down with the theory and they separate it from their own lives, that's when it becomes hard to memorize and remember for an exam. But if you can ground it in your own knowledge, that's when you'll make your analysis and your diagrams really, really clear. So composite demand. This is when a good is demanded for more than one distinct use. So milk can be demanded because it's one of the main ingredients to make all of these products here. So we've got some cottage cheese, it looks like. I'm not too sure what that one is there, that slightly pink thing. It looks a bit like tiramisu latte to me, but I don't know if there is milk in tiramisu latte, but some kind of paste or something. We've got loads and loads of cheese varieties here. We've got cream, we've got milk, semi-skimmed milk. So milk is just used for so many different products. So again, if we have a look at this, if we have, say this is the demand for, I'm going to call it C, for cheese. Say the demand for cheese increases, so we've got D2 there. Because milk is a component of cheese, we're going to see the demand for milk as well. This is very similar to derived demand at the moment, the way I've drawn these diagrams. But we're going to see that the whole demand for milk is going to increase because cheese is a component of that demand for milk. It's a part of the demand for it. Now it does depend upon the demand for all those other dairy products staying the same. So ceteris paribus would have to stay true for it to have that effect on the demand and supply diagram. But that's normally what happens, and that's very closely related to this concept of derived demand, and this is the demand for one good, which is the result of demand for another good. Now I found that one in one textbook, and this is the definition that's in the newest AQA textbook. Derived demand being the demand for a good which is the input into the production of another good. Now this top one here is the definition that I've most commonly seen in textbooks, but I actually think that this one makes it a little bit clearer what it is. So a good example of this would be labour. So labour, you don't tend to demand labour just for the fun of it. You're demanding it because of the things that they can provide. So if we look at a market here, and if we think that this is the market for heart surgery, so I'm going to call it HS, and if there's an increased demand for heart surgery, well, one of the inputs into heart surgery is surgeons. So if this is the market for surgeons, yes, we're going to demand more surgeons to be able to carry out that heart surgery. And then we can see it would actually be the wages that were having an effect on here. We can see that it's going to be an increase in the wages of heart surgeons in this market. Okay, and the last one we're going to look at is joint supply. Now this is when one good is produced, another good is also produced from the raw materials. And an example of this could be beef and leather. So I suppose leather could be thought of as a byproduct, or beef could be thought as a byproduct of the production of leather. So when you produce beef, you can also get leather as well. Now a really similar concept to this is competing supply. Now this is in the AQA textbook, but it's not actually mentioned on the specification. But it's useful to know it as well to get a kind of full understanding of the different interrelated markets. And this is where raw materials are used to produce one good, and if they're used to produce that good, they cannot be used to produce another good. So there's opportunity cost involved there. So food and biofuel, often made from grains, and if you turn them into food, you can't turn them into biofuel. If you turn them into biofuel, you can't turn them into food. So first, let's have a look at the market for beef and leather, which we're calling joint supply. So if we've got, for some reason, if there's an increase in the supply of beef, technological advances, or we just realise that there's a better way of looking after cattle, and we're able to get more cattle to adulthood, whatever reason it is, it can be anything, subsidies, anything that's going to shift supply outwards. We're also going to have an effect on the market for leather, and we're also going to shift that out because leather is going to be this kind of byproduct of producing more beef. So we're likely to see a fall in the price and an increase in that equilibrium quantity as well. Just very, very similar picture on in the beef market as well. So competing supply, though, we had food and biofuel, and this is when we've got supply. If we make the grain into food, we can't make it into biofuel. So say there's been an increase in the demand for food, bigger population in the world, more income in the world, whatever that might be that's caused that increase in demand. We can see that there's going to be an increase in the price in the market, an increase in the equilibrium quantity. What we find in the biofuel market is going to be different. We're going to see that there's a decrease in the supply of biofuel because more of the grain has been used to produce the food, because we've got this movement along the supply curve. So we can't just supply more without putting more input into the production of food. So we have in this market, in biofuel, we have an increase in the price and a decrease in the equilibrium quantity. In this market, we've got an increase in the price, but we've got an increase in the equilibrium quantity. We're diverting our production from biofuel and we're going to put it into the production of food. So that's quite a complicated presentation there, but what I'd really advise you to do is make sure you learn your definitions of joint demand, substitutes, composite demand, derived demand, joint supply. And think about different scenarios. Think about if demand increases in those markets, what happens to the interrelated market? If demand decreases, if supply increases, if supply decreases, what would happen to the interrelated market? You know, if demand increasing for beef, what happens to the market for leather? Those types of things. And always thinking about, when we're looking at what happens to the market, we're also thinking about what happens to the price. And the equilibrium quantity. So always relating it back to that price and equilibrium quantity.